All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Andrew Culberson, and today I'll be giving you a walkthrough of Fuel iX, the new enterprise-grade GenAI platform being built here at TELUS Digital. Before we begin, I'd like to give a little bit of a self-introduction. So as I mentioned, my name is Andrew Culberson, and I am actually a recent graduate of the GTLP program here at TELUS. If you're not familiar, this stands for the Graduate Technology and Leadership Program, and it is the new grad program here at TELUS where you get to basically rotate through a bunch of different teams within the company to get sort of a wide breadth of experience before finally deciding on where you want to land full time. And I'll be talking a bit more about that before we actually dive into the platform here. Currently, I am a full stack developer on Fuel iX. So this means I'm involved in the deployment, the front end, the back end, all of our different services. I get to sort of touch it all. And I've been building cool stuff with AI at TELUS for a little bit now. And on the side, I like to play music and lift weights and climb rocks. If you like to do those things, feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to chat. So first, jumping into my journey through the GTLP program at TELUS, I started off as a co-op during school on the wireless DevOps data and tools team, which was a team within the wireless stream at TELUS, dealing with TELUS's wireless networks, doing things like building data pipelines and creating machine learning applications for things like revenue prediction and so on. I got to work with all sorts of cool tools like Apache NiFi on-premise and actual lab environments, and also working on prototype or on POCs, migrating those pipelines to the cloud with Dataflow and NiFi on Kubernetes and all of these other cool things. And here I actually got to start giving some presentations on what I was working on, which I thought was super cool. From there, I found myself in the GTLP program on my first team, the Innovation Factory, which was a team within the wireless core network at TELUS, where I worked as a full stack application developer on proof of concepts within the wireless core, doing things like creating an alarming portal for private wireless networks and creating a distributed application for IP layer health checks, which I thought was super fun. And I got to start giving presentations here on new technologies that I had discovered that I thought would be useful to integrate into our stack within the wireless core, such as SvelteKit, which was a new full stack framework at the time, and CockroachDB, which was, I think, like a relatively new technology, at least to TELUS at the time. I also got to do things like mobile testing and writing cloud services in Go. And here I actually joined what's called a sub-program in the GTLP, the Graduation Highlights program, where I got to practice my public speaking skills, emceeing events for when people would rotate between teams or graduate from the program. From here, generative AI got really popular, and so I found my way onto the Unicorn AI team, which was building an internal generative AI platform for TELUS. We built the TELUS Generative AI Launchpad, which we'll be talking more about in a second here, using all sorts of tools like Next.js, Firebase, FastAPI, and more. And here I got to give even more presentations. And from here, I found myself actually graduating from the program early onto the Fuel iX team, which I'll be talking about more in a second here. If any of that sounded cool to you, like technologies you want to work with or things you want to do, creating proof of concepts, influencing how technology is used within a large company, any of that, then I highly recommend joining the GTLP. I think Harleen will post a link in the chat there for where you can apply. But I couldn't recommend it enough for career development and just like having fun. TELUS is a great place to work, and the GTLP program is super fun. Cool. So now on to the meat of today's presentation. So this is the agenda. First, we'll talk about the origins of Fuel iX, so where it came from, followed by what is Fuel iX, and then I have a series of live demos to give, and then a sneak peek at something super top secret that I've been working on, which I think you'll all be very excited to see. Cool. So Fuel iX and the origins at TELUS. So our vision for generative AI at TELUS has always been to embrace and democratize generative AI. This means getting out leading edge capabilities and advanced AI features to employees as quickly as possible. But with this kind of speed, you must have an emphasis on safety and security. You can't be reckless, especially at a company with as critical a function as TELUS. And this means you must follow the highest responsible AI standards. So like data sovereignty, if you have like DNTL lists and so on and so forth. And finally, TELUS has always aimed to enrich internally, so find ways to use these AI tools to improve employees internally, whether it be to be more productive or to like enjoy their work more, and then find ways to bring these tools and offer them externally to other people. So here's a bit of a summary of our impact at TELUS with the generative AI platform that we built there. So we created opportunities for experimentation with over 3,000 plus custom copilots. If you're not familiar with what a copilot is, we'll be jumping more into that later as we brought them into Fuel iX. With over 35,000 plus users, doing things like creating meeting summaries, generating business requirements, and writing code. We created clients for all sorts of interfaces, such as a website, a Slack bot, and a Google chat bot, with many more interfaces coming to Fuel iX, such as Chrome extensions, VS Code extensions, and more. And we largely transformed the way that we work at TELUS. So we created a Spock bot, which is essentially like an IT chatbot that would triage your request with generative AI before potentially passing it off to a real IT member. We created a OneSource bot for querying the internal OneSource database at TELUS. There's a Milo sales bot for salespeople at TELUS within stores, so they can ask questions and get answers on the fly. And the TELUS Generative AI Copilot that exists on our internal platform for all employees. So essentially, the story of Fuel iX came from these three companies building effectively the exact same thing, but for their individual organization. So TELUS was building the Generative AI Launchpad, WillowTree was building out ChatWT, and TELUS Digital Experience was building out Work Assist. And the idea was to have a way for their employees to access generative AI safely so that they weren't going out to like sketchy websites on the internet and uploading potentially sensitive company data. And essentially, eventually the realization came that if we're building the same thing for these three companies separately, what if we just built it once and reused it? And since we already have this reusable like product, basically, let's offer it to other people. And that's where the dream of Fuel iX emerged. So Fuel iX, what is it? So this diagram sums it up well. Essentially, this is the AI technology stack if you're serving generative AI to customers. At the bottom of the stack, you have your hardware or the physical media on which AI runs. So these are your NVIDIA GPUs, if you're familiar, like H100s, Blackwells, and so on, that actually do the inference or run the AI. On top of that, you have your cloud providers who provision this hardware and then offer it to customers through different cloud services. And then on top of that, you have your foundation models, such as your ChatGPTs, your Llamas, your Claudes, and so on and so forth. And you can see within this stack already, there are so many choices to be made, whether it be like what hardware it runs on, what cloud provider, what model, that it becomes hard to implement, much less manage and monitor and administrate. And so it became sort of obvious that there needs to be some sort of layer that allows for the easy arbitrage between different technology stacks for AI so that you can build applications on top of it while not having to worry so much about the technical details underneath. And so this is where Fuel iX emerged, acting as a layer for managing your models, monitoring your deployments, and offering developer APIs for deep technical integrations. On top of this, we also provide turnkey applications that are built into the platform so that you immediately have sort of templatized AI apps that you can offer to your employees. And on top of this, you can build your own customization and digital services on top of our platform. So jumping more into it here, on the left, you have your company. So your company brings its own auth, its own data, its applications and services it may have built. And all of these can be integrated into Fuel iX, whether that be auth that sits in front of access to the application or data that's integrated into your chatbots from your Google Drive, your Jiras, and so on, while also allowing for things like integrations of chatbots into your Slack, into your Google Chat and Teams. And additionally, if you're building your own websites and APIs and automations, those can all be integrated to use the core so that you have this layer of administration managing your deployments and so on and so forth. Additionally, we also offer services like a RAG pipeline. So if you're not familiar, like retrieval augmented generation. And we also offer our own agents and tools on the platform. On top of that, we are entirely OpenAI compatible. So if you use the OpenAI SDK, you're just able to swap the API endpoint and the API key, and then you can access everything the exact same way that you would through the OpenAI SDK. Cool. So what AI challenges do we address? So we address these three. How do you pick the right technology? How do you manage and maintain it? And how do you make it secure? So for the first two, how do you pick the right technology and how do you manage and maintain it? Fuel iX is both flexible and controllable, which means that you can easily switch between different AI models and cloud services. You can imagine that a new model might come out, which is even better for your use case. Let's say it's like coding or translations. So you can easily switch over to that model. Or you need a more cost-effective model for your use case as you don't need as much intelligence. You can easily switch to that. We also centralize the management of all of your generative AI functions within your company, which allows for the easy administration, monitoring, and linking with tools like Slack and SSO. On top of that, how do you make it secure? So FuelX is a responsible AI framework, and we provide enterprise-grade security. And to back that up, TELUS was awarded the International Outstanding Organization Prize from the Responsible AI Institute in recognition of our leadership in responsible AI and our commitment to fostering trust and benefiting society. Additionally, we are the first in the world to achieve the ISO Privacy by Design certification twice. Cool. So now we'll be moving into some demos. First, I'll go over what we'll be demoing today, and then I'll jump into the live application. So starting off, we'll be spending most of our time in the FuelIX web app. So this is the gateway to all of the FuelIX applications, such as Copilots, Playground, Chat, Agent Trainer, Red Team, and more coming. But today we will be primarily focusing on Copilots. In some places right now, this is called Assistants and Copilots and others. This is soon to be sort of consolidated to just Copilots, so we'll call them Copilots. We'll be demoing the Playground and the new FuelIX Slack app. Cool. So starting off in the Playground, this is essentially a laboratory where you can run different AI experiments in parallel to see how different configurations work for your use case, whether that be like a prompt or a specific application you want to use the AI for. We offer full control over the modification of the transcript and setting advanced model parameters such as the system prompt, the temperature, so on and so forth. Moving on from that, we'll be demoing Copilots. So this is a way to create generative AI chatbots that you can share within your organization. So if you have a specific like common use case, like let's say a QA bot for knowledge on your team, or a bot that like writes specific types of applications for you that you commonly see, then you can sort of create this copilot. So we'll be jumping more into that in a second here. And then following that, we will demo the FuelIX Slack app. So this is a way to bring right now our flagship copilot to your Slack threads. So you can do things like generate summaries of threads, search the internet, generate images, and anything else that you could imagine generative AI being useful for in the Slack context. And soon you will be able to actually bring your custom copilots that you've created in the previous application mentioned to your Slack threads, allowing you to create things like QA bots for your help channels and so much more. Cool. So jumping into it, what is a copilot? Essentially, this is a build your own AI application, or if you're familiar with the term, it's an agent. So it can do things like generate images, search the internet, execute code. It can even write small applications that are rendered in your chat. And on top of that, it has a RAG-enabled architecture so that you can upload your documents and have it use those documents as context when answering user questions. On top of that, we also offer a REST API, which is, as I mentioned, OpenAI compatible through the Assistants SDK, so that you can integrate your copilots into external applications that you build. And as I mentioned soon, you'll be able to message them through Slack. Cool. So today we're going to actually be building a copilot, and this will be the Edmonton Animal Bylaw bot. So this is a copilot for a team specializing in animal bylaws in Edmonton. I picked Edmonton because I'm from Edmonton, and animal bylaws because animals are cool. And it'll do things like summarize transcripts for monthly stakeholder meetings. It'll have knowledge on Edmonton's animal bylaws, and it will generate interactive visualizations of Edmonton's animal bylaws. Cool, so let's jump into it. It is demo time. So moving over here, we have first the lab or the playground within FuelIX. And essentially this is a way to run different experiments side by side so you can see what works best for your application. So to start off with, we just have this one panel. Let's say I switch it to like GPT-4o. I can just send hello. And we get back a response from GPT-4o. Hello, how can I assist you today? Thank you, GPT. So from here, we can add more panels. So if I click this new panel from scratch after clicking this plus, we can add more experiments side by side. So let's go ahead and just add like 3. And let's try out some different models. So we have 4o, Claude 3.5 Sonnet. Let's try out one of the thinking models. Maybe let's do O1 Mini. And let's ask it something like, what is the square root of some like ginormous number? And we'll see how they do. So 4o comes back right away. Claude 3.5 Sonnet, a little slower, but coming back with a similar answer, I believe. And then O1 Mini, you can see like pauses and then is thinking in the background, if you're familiar with like how the O1 models work, and then comes back with an answer. So you can see here that it looks like 4.0 and O1 mini got a pretty close answer. And then, yeah, it looks like Cloud 3.5 Sonic got something. I don't know if I'll verify the answer right now, but you can sort of see how you can run these comparisons side by side to see how they all perform. Additionally, you can modify the system prompt in each of these panels. So I can say like, you always talk like a pirate, use lots of pirate emojis. And maybe this one, I'll say like, you always talk like a gun-slinging cowboy. And then this one, I could say like, you always talk like a super cool robot. And then we can ask like, please write a poem about peaches. And we see here, I matey, here's a poem about peaches for you. And yeah, we have these like different responses. You can see here's a cowboy style poem. And yeah, you can run these different experiments and see how they behave. O1 Mini didn't listen to its system prompt so well there, but that's okay. And yeah, that is essentially the lab. So from here, you can imagine how you would sort of like fine tune your prompt for each of the panels and try to like see which model performs the best under different configurations. Cool. So now we'll be moving over to copilots. We can click this little waffle menu in the top here, and then copilots here. So when you first go to copilots, you're greeted by our flagship copilot, the Fuel iX copilot. We can go ahead and just like message it hi. And you'll see here we have a bit of like a fancier UI. If you click this dropdown, you can see that we actually have the model reason before it responds in most cases. So here it's like the user's greeting me with a simple hi. I don't need to use any tools for this interaction. Pretty cool. We can ask it something like, what is the average cost of a banana? And we'll see that it'll like reach out and search the internet and sort of behaves as you would expect like a standard sort of generative AI application to behave. So this is like our default copilot that's sort of tuned to be like a general assistant. As you can see, it's also agentic. So it'll like reason and then call tools, and it can do this in multiple steps. So you can ask more complex queries like, when was the most recent Olympics? Generate a picture to commemorate it. And you can see that it'll actually go through and follow these steps with like multiple steps in a row through reasoning. So here it's like first search for information, then use that information. And we'll see that it'll come back with this image. On top of that, while it's generating the image, we have these tools that are in beta right now, soon to not be in beta, generative UI and code execution. So let's go ahead and show those off. Let's turn them on here. And it's coming back with the image. And very cool. So yeah, it found out most recent Olympics was in Paris, and then it comes back and generates this picture. A little bit of a wide ring in the center there, but other than that, it's like doing pretty good. Cool. So yeah, with generative UI and code execution, this is a way to actually get the model to run code, but also generate HTML that is then rendered in your chat. So as a small demo, I actually happen to have this mock financial data on hand. So I'm going to go ahead and upload that, not from anything specific. It just contains some generic data like revenue and so on. And I'll just ask it like, please visualize the data I just uploaded. And if we give it a chance, it'll first like execute code to essentially analyze the data that I just uploaded. You can see here running JavaScript. And then once it has like the desired analytics out of that, it'll actually generate some UI for us. So if we give it a moment here, then we should see like a cool visualization of this data. One moment here. I also see a bunch of questions coming through. So at the end, we'll do a QA session, and then yeah, I'll allow you guys to ask me some questions. So cool. You can see this artifact appears. If we go ahead and click on it, we get this side panel. If you've looked at like Claude's artifacts, it's very similar, except we have like a couple different things that we've implemented, such as like embedding files into the HTML and so on. But we can go ahead and click render here, and we see that we now have several diagrams from the data that we just uploaded. So if you're familiar, this is like an HTML document, and this is essentially all generated by the AI agent just now from our request. Cool. So let's actually build a copilot. So maybe let's build up to some motivation of like why you might build a Copilot first. And we can do this by simply asking it like, please make these visualizations into a slide deck. And we'll sort of see that it struggles along initially, as you're probably familiar with when working with LLMs. They can like hallucinate or take some time to like get to the answer that you want it to get to. And you kind of have to poke and prod it. And sort of you eventually arrive at this intuition that if I could just save the current state I was at in this chat in some way, then it would be really useful to come back to like repeat what I've done here. And sort of this is where the notion of copilots come from. You can set like a system prompt and instructions that tell it how it should behave based off of your like experiments with AI. So actually talking to a default copilot and figuring out the things that it struggles with is like good intuition for when you should build the copilots. So here we can see it built this slide deck, and it looks okay, but like it needs a bit more styling. There's no animations, but pretty good overall. But eventually you might arrive at something like this. So let's move over to the community tab. If you just click this here, then you can see all of the copilots that have been created for your organization. So I'm in the TELUS org, so I see all of the different TELUS bots. And we can actually look at all of the different copilots created by different users. So here we have like an app script coder, a call audit agent, company research tool. But we also see this TELUS slide deck builder. So this is actually a copilot that I created that builds TELUS branded slide decks. So if I go ahead and click start chat here, we'll make sure that this is turned on, and we'll say like, please make a slide deck about the TELUS wireless network. And if we give it a moment here, it creates this artifact, and we'll just wait for that to load in. And we'll notice a few things that are like sort of already decided for us that make the slide deck super pretty. One moment here. Cool, cool. See that code coming in real fast. All right, so we might notice right away that in the top right, we have this TELUS logo. We're also using like the TELUS colors, and we have this like specific formatting on each slide. So it talks about like 5G network excellence, network reliability, innovation, leadership, superior customer experience, and then the classic phrase at the end, let's make the future friendly. If we actually go into this copilot, we can view its system prompt. And essentially, this is where the magic happens. So this is the screen where you can actually like create your copilot, which we'll be jumping more into in a second when we build our own. But here you can see the system prompt, which is essentially, if you're not familiar, a set of natural language directives of how the copilot should behave. So here I give it a bunch of information, like you build slide decks with Reveal.js, which is a library for building slide decks in HTML, and your Generate UI tool. If the tool isn't available, please inform them. That's just technical because I know how it was implemented, but soon it will be out of beta, so not required. And we also tell it things like how it should import the different modules. And this seems super technical, but actually, if you're in that regular Copilot chat and you sort of work towards a working application, you can ask your Copilot, how did you get to that? And then copy and paste those replies into your system prompt for your Copilot and sort of arrive at something that seems super technical and complicated, sort of a AI SaaS built within Fuel.ix. So now let's actually create our own Copilot. So if we close out of this, here, then we can click on this Create Your Own Copilot button. And we'll move into a blank template for a brand new Copilot. So here, let's give it a name, the Edmonton Animal Bylaw Bot. And we'll give it a picture. I actually just happen to have this cute picture of a robot in a safari outfit here. So that will be our little mascot for today. And we'll give it a description. So this is a Copilot for the Edmonton Animal Bylaw team. Excuse my typing. Cool. And now we need to give it a system prompt. So I actually have a system prompt prepared for this. I will have to quickly open that up. One moment here. And then we'll walk through it. All right. So yeah, starting at the top here, we just have the instruction. You are a co-pilot for the Edmonton Animal Bylaw team. You have access to a repository of knowledge on Edmonton's animal bylaws. And additionally, you provide summaries of the monthly stakeholder meeting transcripts. Below this, we give it the format of how it should return these summaries. So this is in Markdown if you're familiar, but you can get it to format it whichever way you want. And it says things like the notes on each stakeholder, the meeting summary, and some action items from the transcript. Cool. So moving over to the advanced settings tab, this is where you can sort of deeply configure your agents or your Copilot's capabilities. So starting at the top, you can decide what model it should use. Right now, we offer Claude 3.5 Sonnet 4.0, or right now, Gemini 1.5 Pro. We'll be updating the models soon to like the latest and greatest. So Gemini 2 and Claude 37. And then in the tools here, you can turn on things like an image creator, search internet. Let's do execute code and generate UI. Why not? For fun. We'll also enable file upload, and we'll let you upload images. So yeah, this is all the different capabilities. Let's also make it aware of the date and time. So may as well just like turn on everything, see how it works. If we move over to the knowledge tab, this is where you can actually upload data that your Copilot will reference in conversations. So it just so happens that I actually have access to some Edmonton animal bylaws. So I'll go ahead and upload those. So while this uploads, I'll talk about RAG. So if you're not familiar with RAG, it stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. Essentially, this is a way to upload your data where it is essentially indexed and searchable by the AI in chat, giving it a super extended context. So you could upload like 100 files and have an answer based off of the content of those files. So our file is uploaded. So let's go ahead and save and jump into a chat. All right, so now we're in the chat with our brand new Copilot, and I'll just go ahead and ask it like, what is the cost of a dog license in Edmonton? And it should come back here, and I think it's like $77 if I remember correctly. So here it decided to search the internet. So that's actually a bit of a hallucination. It should be searching its knowledge. So we'll just say like, please search your knowledge. And yeah, so with LLMs, there's always hallucinations. When I tried this in previous times, it would immediately search its knowledge base, but here it decided to search the internet and didn't actually find the answer. But here it searched the knowledge base and it saw that a regular dog license in Edmonton, $77 a year. A spayed or neuter dog license is $37 a year. And it has some like reductions and waivers that are available and all the information I can need. We can ask it other questions like, can I own a mountain goat in Edmonton? And it'll search through its knowledge base and find any relevant bylaws, probably relating to like large animals or exotic animals, and then respond. So here you can see it's actually searching multiple things, knowledge base and the internet. Additionally, you can turn off that internet search if you only want it to reference its internal knowledge, but we'll just give it the capability here for fun. And it says there's like technically a provision for obtaining a special license, but yeah, probably not a mountain goat unless you're like a zookeeper or something. Cool. We also mentioned that it will do meeting summaries for our monthly stakeholder meeting. So I actually have a transcript prepared here, actually generated by AI. So I'll just go ahead and paste that in. And we should see it come back with that format that we requested. So here, notes on each stakeholder. So Sarah Thompson led the discussion on a comprehensive bylaw modernization. Dr. James Chen highlighted an increase in reptile ownership. And Maria raised concerns about a fatal dog attack, which is kind of spooky. And we could see a list of action items here. So we see like a developer proposal for a digital licensing system, create framework for a tiered fine system, feral cat colony management, which is apparently a problem in Edmonton, according to this transcript, though I don't think so. It's AI generated after all. But yeah, cool. So as we mentioned, we also wanted to be able to create interactive visualizations. So let's head back into our Copilot settings and let's do that. So as you noticed in this advanced settings tab, we have generative UI turned on, but we haven't really given the Copilot any instructions on how it should use this tool. So let's head back to our system prompt and do that. So at the end here, I'll just give it an instruction and say like, you create beautiful interactive visualizations for Edmonton's animal bylaws. And we'll say like, make the visualizations super pretty with lots of animations. And we'll say, for fun, make it cowboy themed, because we're on that cowboy hype today, I guess. So we'll save that and then return to the chat. One moment here, wait for it to save. It's taking some time here, but in the background, I'm preparing for the next thing, so that's all right. One moment here, cool. So it's ready. And then we can ask it something like, make a visualization of the cost of different animal licenses in Edmonton. Cool. So first it's going to search for information from our knowledge base. And then based on the search results, I'll create a cowboy themed visualization showing the different animal licensing fees in Edmonton. So first it's deciding to, oh, I forgot to turn on this tool here. So it's generating an image. But if we moved over to the generate UI tool, then it would make like an HTML document. We can do that for fun after seeing the image here. Yeah, so it comes back. Honestly, that looks pretty good. It's a little misspelled, a little AI-y, but dog listen, dog listen. I keeps trying, but it hasn't quite figured it out. And it was like, please make an app. But honestly, not bad. Also, I found out in Edmonton that you can own pigeons, which is pretty cool. You can own actually up to 75 pigeons, which is interesting, and a lot of pigeons, but yeah. Cool, so let's check out the application that it builds. It's coming back now. Saw cowboy emoji, so we're off to a good start. Very cool. Yeah, we have this application. We can switch between different animals and calculate the fee. So a spayed and neutered cat, yeehaw, your annual license fee is $22. Pretty sick. So now we have this like general utility copilot for an Edmonton animal bylaw team. But you can imagine building this for any sort of team, like specifically for TELUS, if you work in the wireless networks, maybe there's like information you're accessing all the time that you don't want to have to search through this PDF for. You could create a copilot just to sit on top of that document, or to like answer common questions about your team for external teams working with you. All sorts of utilities that can be built with copilots. Cool. So now we're actually going to demo the new Slack app, which is very similar to the interface you're seeing now, but accessible through Slack. So if I open up my Slack client here, you'll see I have this private test channel. Don't mind my previous messages. We'll just go ahead and message it here and say like, hello, please evaluate the global banana markets. And we should see that it'll come back with a response here. We get this processing your request just to let you know that it's seen it. And then we'll see eventually a very similar UI to what we see in the web app. One moment here, where we have this like status at the top. So searching the internet. And if we actually click on this, we should see it's thinking so far. So to provide information about the global banana markets, I'll need to search for the current information about global banana markets and then focus on key market indicators, prices, and trends. So essentially now within Slack, we have this model doing research. But on top of that, it's actually user aware. So I can ask it like, you can see here, it has like this @Andrew. So it's aware of who I am. We can say like, what time is it right now for me? And it will have access to all that information. So if you have threads with many different users, it'll know like who sent what and be able to do things like summaries, action items, all sorts of useful utilities, and also like call tools, generate images, and so on and so forth. So yeah, it says right now it's March 4th at 12:36 p.m. MST, which is true. So yeah, pretty useful little utility. And eventually you'll be able to bring your other copilots, so that Edmonton Animal Bylaw bot, I could actually bring to my Slack thread to answer questions if I was like running that team. Cool. So that concludes our demos of the web app for today, but we do have one top secret thing left to show you guys, which I think is pretty cool. And this will actually lead into our QA session if it works out. So what's coming next? So you now know how to build AI chatbots, but what if I told you that you can build and deploy multiplayer applications with the help of your AI chatbot? And so this is Gizmos. Essentially, it's a way to create full stack web apps and then deploy them securely for your organization. So I have a demo running right now on my local machine. So we'll just go ahead and show that off. And let's ask it, please build a live Q&A app for my presentation at the National Engineering Month. We'll say like users should be able to submit a question and their name. And then there should be a check mark so I can mark the questions as answered. And our agent now will actually build a gizmo. And this is a full stack immediately deployed application. So you can imagine all sorts of utilities being built with this. I can even show you some cool ones that have been built previously. But yeah, let's try to build this Q&A app for the QA session at the end of this presentation. So if we pull this down, the UI is probably a little janky right now because this is very much a proof of concept. But yeah, we'll give it a chance to go here. So yeah, it talks about what it needs. So it'll need a form for users to submit questions in their names, a backend to store and retrieve questions, a page to display submitted questions, live updating functionality. And then here, I guess the project it shows is already in use. So yeah, it's going to call it National Engineering QA instead, and we'll give it a chance. So yeah, this is something that we're hoping to have available to people soon, and I think is like a super useful utility. One moment here. So another thing to note is gizmos are also deployed with like a database, but they also have access to things like cron jobs and integrations with external APIs. So you could build basically anything that you can imagine with a gizmo. So let's go ahead and open that. And now we have this QA. So I'll write like Andrew, be like, what's up, dude? Submit question, and we can see it appear. And then I can even click this check mark. And now it's, I guess, marked as done, though I don't know if there's like some clear UI for that. So we can do one more revision and say like, please make the front end prettier and make it more clear when a question is answered. And as you see here, this is like a URL and this is live data. If I refresh, this is like being retrieved from an API. And this is all built with generative AI. Yeah, right before your eyes, basically. So let's give it one more chance to make this page a bit prettier and have this show up more clearly. Here it's using its edit tool, and it's going to like add timestamps to questions and improve the overall layout and spacing. So that'll be cool. We'll see how it does. Cool. So it's updated the Q&A app, and you can access the updated version here. And this looks significantly better. You can see it's like marked with green. There's like little animations and stuff. And I'll actually go ahead and send this to the chat here so that I can, 1 second here, you guys can actually ask questions live. Yeah, go ahead and feel free to ask questions. And yeah, I guess this begins like the end of the presentation and the beginning of the QA session. Additionally, if you want to like just speak up and ask something, I'll also take questions here. Maybe Harleen, if you want to like help moderate that. But yeah, so first question from Vahab, can we point to a website, one source for knowledge gathering? So at the moment, we don't have this capability, but this is very much planned. I know there's some services like Firecrawl, I think is a big one that we were looking at for actually gathering data from websites. But as of right now, we have like the PDF uploading, and we'll be working on integrating all other sources of knowledge soon. When will gizmos be available? So we're not entirely sure on that one, but I am hoping to have it available as quickly as possible because I think it's super cool. Will the Slack capability be added to existing Google chatbot? So I don't think, so this is in reference to the TELUS internal Slack bot. Largely we'll be moving over to the new FuelIX chatbot. So I think, yeah, we'll be migrating everything to FuelIX within TELUS. Is there a plan to integrate it with Jira? There is a plan to integrate it with Jira. It's on the roadmap. And we have lots of plans for cool tools and integrations there. Bill says Tesla. Thank you. Mike, can you please show us how we can call FuelX core API with API key and secret? So I don't know if I can do that right now, but there is this docs.fuelix.ai, which I can send your way, that will have information about those kinds of things. And then there should be some contacts there for help as well if you need help with integrations. Jean-Francois says, I wish I stayed in computer science now. Too bad, so sad. Just joking. That's brutal. But thank you. Diego says, so the Copilot manages one-shot iteration with the LLM. What if we need to run a process? So it actually does run on LangChain, so it's agentic. If you want to do like a preset graph, I think we've talked about support for that. And that might actually be towards something like Gizmos, where it's like, what if you write the entire LangChain app and then host it for your enterprise? Can we integrate FuelIX into Google, Chat, Mail, Calendar? So right now, no, but we do plan integrations for all of these different clients. And will FuelIX be able to connect with the Google platform? That is also currently on the roadmap. So a lot of our data connections are on the roadmap, and yeah, should be available relatively soon in the coming months. Cool. And I guess I see also questions in the chat here. So how safe is the information in there? Let's say I build a Python script, put some passwords or IP addresses in there, which could be sensitive data. So yeah, one risk with Gizmos is people might be like hard coding API keys. We do plan integrations for like setting environment variables safely and all sorts of things like that. But this is also why our apps, or the intended endpoint for Gizmos, is to have them shareable securely within your organization, so that only people you invite can even view the application, much less like the source code. Will FuelIX, or can FuelIX be integrated with AWS? So we do have applications on Bedrock and support deployments in AWS. Do we at TELUS have a tool similar to Cursor to develop tools? So actually, there's an open source client called Klein, which I highly recommend. And Klein supports any kind of like proxy, so you can actually attach it to the FuelIX proxy directly to use it. If we generate an SQL statement for an external DB, how can we run the SQL statement in external DB and retrieve results? So yeah, I guess that would be more of a technical question, but yeah, you can copy over the query, or if we're talking about Gizmos as I'm showing it now, then that would be a little bit more complicated. You need to figure out how to like reach your SQL database from the Gizmo. Yeah, that's a pretty deep question. Is this chat planned to be sold to X in the image generator to Google search? Wondering if something like the system can be integrated in a software like AutoCAD to draw design buildings or machines. Yeah, so eventually might offer integrations with things like AutoCAD and so on. But yeah, there's all sorts of things that we're looking into. We're also looking at general MCP support. So if you're familiar with Anthropic's MCP, or Model Context Protocol, it's a way to sort of like create external tools and then connect them to your AI chats. So through MCP, you can use basically any sort of open source MCP server, connect it to your agent, and have access to all sorts of tools and integrations. On the Cursor question, can you provide the link name for that tool? Yeah, sure. If you look up Klein, I can link it in the chat here, but it is a VS Code extension. And I think it's #1 on OpenRouter, but it's like an AI agent in your VS Code that will create applications for you or do whatever you need. Very similar to like Cursor. Cool. And yeah, I'm not sure if there's any remaining questions here. Let me scroll through this list just to see if, no, it seems like they're sorted by time. So pretty cool. Yeah, I think then should be good. Does anyone have any remaining questions, or are we good here? Cool. I guess then we'll wrap it up there. So thank you everyone very much for coming today. If you're interested in trying out FuelIX, feel free to reach out to me, and then I will point you towards the necessary people. Right now, we don't have like a self sign up, but we can provision like a demo account for you and so on if you would like to try it out.
Andrew, for maybe the external folks on the call, do you want to share your email ID if they have any questions
Yeah, for sure. Feel free to reach out to me at andrew@fuelix.ai. So let's post that in the chat there. Awesome. Again, thank you all so very much. Much appreciated. Hope you guys had fun today.